In this Elden Ring video, I'm going to be covering all the skills that we found during the network test. I think we have footage for the majority of these. There may be a couple that the footage was garbled or accidentally wasn't captured for some reason. We'll still show what the skills are, even if we can't show the live action demonstration. But we're going to go through all the skills in this network test. So to start off with, what are skills? Skills are basically, weapon arts from Dark Souls 3 effectively. Each weapon in the game has its own ability that you use L2 with that does something interesting. These can now be overridden on most weapons. Some weapons are unique and they have a unique skill that can't be replaced with other skills. But the way you replace skills is you go to your site of grace or the nearest site of grace or whatever one you want to go to. And you go to the Ashes of War menu and you select one of the Ashes of War that you found throughout the game, either from a boss or from a random loot. And you slot it into that weapon, and that skill then overrides the skill that's there, and you can pull that back out at any time from a site of grace. So let's say you try out a skill and you don't like it, you can remove it from the weapon, and then you can go on back to using the skill that it had to begin with. Something interesting also about Ashes of War is that a lot of them also change the scaling of the weapon. They can make it a keen weapon, or a quality weapon, or a magic weapon, or a holy weapon, or lightning weapon, etc. So when you select the skill, it will also ask you if you want to change the damage type of the weapon and the scaling of the weapon to that type. You don't have to. You can leave it on your default, whatever it is of that weapon, and just use the skill, or you have the option to change the scaling and damage if you want. And again, you can change these at any time at a site of grace, so you can experiment around, which is pretty cool. Another thing I just want to note before we get into all the skills is that you can't use every skill on every weapon. Some skills have requirements like must require a thrust weapon because maybe this skill is like a repeated thrust. Well, if the weapon doesn't have a thrust, you can't really have a repeated thrust, can you? So not everyone can be used on everyone, and it seems like shields have their own unique skills that are just made for them specifically. And this may also be true for bows and things like that, although we did not find any for bows in the network test. The first skill on our list is called Barricade Shield. This allows you to use L2 to temporarily harden your shield to deflect powerful blows. So theoretically, I haven't tested this actually in combat, but I've just played around with it. It should be able to block like powerful hits without you taking damage or without reducing the stamina damage that you take. You have to time it. It has a very small window though. Like it's kind of like a parry almost. You can't just hold it up. So if you're going to use this, then you're going to have to, get good at timing with your blocks. The next skill is Blood Blade. This skill allows you to shoot out a projectile of blood. This is a unique ability to the Reduvia dagger. So you can't use this on other weapons, or at least not that we found in the network test. And it shoots forward projectiles that can set the bleeding status effect on enemies. So if you need some range and you're using it, then you're going to be able to get range out of this weapon, which is great. The Brave Warcry is similar to what it was in Dark Souls 3. It boosts your attack power temporarily, and it makes it so your heavy attacks have a unique attack pattern. And it seems like they attack faster, too. So this is something you're going to buff yourself with and then go ham. Buckler Parry is found only on the Buckler during the network test. I don't know if it's going to be available on other shields in the full version of the game, but it obviously has the unique parry animation that you would remember from the Souls games, allowing you a little bit bigger of a parry window than other parrying shields. The Carian Glintsword will remind players of the Soul Greatsword spell from previous Dark Souls games, except this one is like an overhead slash, and you can actually charge it to increase the size of the blade for increased damage, but you have to be careful because if you get hit, you'll be interrupted. This thing does insane damage. I highly recommend testing it on bosses if you're having a tough time. The Charge Forth ability is something that spears can use, or great spears like the Lance, and it allows you to charge forward a great distance. You can kind of control your character and maneuver it a little bit, but you're primarily going to be aiming for a target that's kind of a ways in front of you. Firing position is the default skill for the short bow, which is the only bow during the network test, and this allows you kind of a longer draw to deal more damage. Light bow attacks, regular attacks don't deal very much damage in this network test. Obviously, there are probably other types of bows that deal more, but it has a very fast firing rate. The firing position basically makes you do a longer draw that it does increase damage. So if you want to get more from each arrow shot, or maybe your enemy is distracted or far enough away that you have enough time to do a longer draw, then you would use this ability. Frenzy is a skill that's kind of interesting. If you just hold L2, your character just sort of swings repeatedly over and over and over, just hack, hack, hack. It would probably be very, very good if you could get into like the back of a boss and just swing away while they're distracted by another player or maybe one of your summons. That way you could get crazy damage in a hurry. The next skill is Glintsword Arch. This will remind players of Homing Soul Mass from other Soul games, or Homing Soul Arrow. Puts up 4 like swords around you that then track a target. It's really, really strong because you can actually set this up and run around, wait for a player, PvP, Or you can, pull out another spell, pull out your sorcery, and go to town with sorcery as well. This is up too. So it's very, very strong. And the fact that it's on your weapon and not an actual sorcery in this game means that more builds are going to have this available. I expect to see this all over the place. I know I'll be using this during the network test this weekend to hopefully have some fun in PvP. Gravitas is an interesting skill because it allows you to plunge your weapon into the ground, and it does this big AoE that pulls enemies closer to you. So I guess if you wanted to bunch enemies up, maybe if you're co-oping or something, so another player could AoE them down, this would be an interesting skill to use. I haven't really tested this out much, but it has interesting applications that I think, people will realize over a long period of time. The next skill is Hailstorm Sword. This is a unique skill on the Dragon Scale Blade, which is a unique weapon in the game, so you can only use it with that so far. It sort of calls this like lightning down that buffs your weapon, so you're going to get like ice and lightning buffs on your weapon for a certain amount of time to attack. Has kind of a long animation, so if you're using it in PvP, you kind of got to be a good distance away where you can use it, or buff before you attack the boss, sort of a thing. Holy Ground is a skill that can be put on a shield. It basically casts an AoE hot or healing over time effect on the ground where you're standing that doesn't move. And it heals you and, allies. So if you're co-oping, this can be great. If you put this under a boss, it can help heal everyone. It comes by default on the Rickety Shield of the Prophet class if you choose this class. However, it's not the actual default skill for that shield. They just put it on there as the starting equipment so you could play around with it. And you can actually find this skill later in the network test and put it on a different shield if you don't like the Rickety Shield. Ordovis Vortex is a unique skill that's only found on the Ordovis Greatsword. So you're only going to be able to use this if you're using that weapon. And again, it can't be overridden or anything like that. It does like an AoE where you like twirls this sword and you slam it down and it does like AoE damage. You can also charge it longer for more successive spins that does even more damage. So you got to be careful with your timing because enemies can be kind of aggressive. You may not be able to pull it off with too long of a charge. But if you can pull it off, it deals incredible damage. Parry is a skill. Big surprise there. This allows you to use some shields to parry enemies. That allows for a riposte that deals incredible damage. This does not cost FP. So if you're using a parry shield, then yeah, you know the drill. Piercing Fang is a really cool skill. It allows you to like charge forward and do a really powerful thrust that can't be blocked. I think this probably has a lot of implications in terms of PvP because it can cover a lot of ground. And if players have shields, even though not too many players in PvP typically use shields, it could allow you to catch an enemy off guard, or maybe you can catch up to an enemy that's trying to run away, etc. So it's just a really interesting weapon overall. Also be good against shielded enemies in PvE. A lot of difficult enemies use shields. Be a good way to get through their shield. Repeating Thrust allows you to like stab repeatedly with thrusts on your weapon. So if you want to like hit over and over with thrusts really quickly, this is a great way to deal some burst damage if you have an opening on an enemy. The Sorcerer Hunter skill allows you to reflect magic back at attackers. It's only found on the Carian Glintsword shield, which is starting equipment of the Enchanted Knight. I have not found it on any other shield or found another copy of the shield anywhere. So if you want to use this skill, then you'll need to use that. And there aren't too many enemies that cast magic during the demo, so it's not super useful. But there is one boss that can throw magic projectiles at you that if you time it right, you can deflect them back. You can also parry with this shield, so it doubles as a parry, so you kind of get a better parry. Spinning Slash allows you to kind of spin around and attack in like a 360-degree AoE. This is mostly found on the Scimitar and also found on the Twin Blade. So if you like doing spinning attacks into like groups of enemies, then this will be a good skill for you. Square Off, you might remember from Dark Souls 3. This is found on the Longsword by default. It basically allows you to go into like a stance, and then you can hit R1 or R2 in order to do like different attacks that cost different amounts of FP. You can kind of get under a target shield or hit them for a lot of stamina damage. It's basically the same ability from Dark Souls 3, just with a different name. Stormblade is an ability that allows you to shoot kind of like air in a horizontal spiral pattern towards a target over a decent distance. It's really great for melee characters because they don't have a lot of range. This allows them to get some range. This ability is the default on the warrior class if you choose that, even though if you purchase a scimitar, it comes with a spinning blade or spinning slash attack. So this isn't the default for scimitars, but it is if you choose the warrior class. Storm Stomp is a somewhat similar ability to Stormblade in visual appearance. It uses that wind effect again, but it puts it in a 360-degree AoE around you that can like knock targets back and deals damage to them. You kind of stomp the ground, and you can kind of spam this over and over if you want. Thunderbolt allows you to cast a Thunderbolt onto a target from a distance. This is really cool. It reminds me of the Nameless King's ability from Dark Souls 3. Now you have it on a weapon. I don't know exactly how this could work in PvP, theoretically. If you could just lock onto a player and then lightning bolt them over and over, it would be kind of OP. So we'll have to see how that goes. The next skill is Determination. This allows you to buff your next attack. So, like, it has a very fast animation. So if you want to, like, you're going to be PvPing or something, or you're going to go in for a really heavy swing and you want to deal as much damage as possible, you can buff it, and then someone has to be wary of that next attack really connecting for good damage. The next skill is Torch Attack. This allows you to kind of like stab forward with your torch, and it can set enemies on fire, some enemies that are weak to fire. So this is interesting if you're using a torch. I don't find that I use it much when I'm using a torch because I'm just using it for the light, but you can use it if you want. And the last skill is Step In Uppercut. This will remind you of Dark Souls 3 immediately when you see it. It allows you to step in with poise and then uppercut for, attacking a character. So kind of like poise through an attack and then uppercut for good damage. Same thing you saw in Dark Souls 3, just in this game with a different name. That's it for our skills video. As you can see, skills are now a mix between magic and actual abilities from Dark Souls 3. They're not just static skills that, are just weapon attacks. So some of them have magic. They've taken sorceries and put them onto the weapons, which has huge implications, because this allows you to use what would have been sorceries on your weapons. And it kind of remains to be seen how balanced that'll be over the course of the game. Sorceries being on a weapon attack that you don't even need to meet the requirements for if it would have been a spell could be extremely, extremely strong under the right circumstances. Those are all the skills we found during the network test. If you guys find any other ones, please let us know, but I'm reasonably sure that's at least 99% of them. There may be one more out there somewhere. But if you guys have questions about the skills, leave them in the comments below, and I will try and answer them as best as I can. So what are you guys' thoughts on the skills in Elden Ring? Are you going to be using them? Did you guys think they would be this good? Or did you think they'd be more like Dark Souls 3 where they were very situational? Let us know in the comments below.